Your film Elephant's Dream was an open movie, is that right? And
Yes.
what does that involve? What is an open movie?
So open means that the movie itself is, in our case, using open source software to make it. And we're releasing the movie along with all the production files in some permissive license. So in the case of Elephant's Dream, that was Creative Commons attribution license. And because we use open source software, it means that the content, the production files are accessible to anybody, as opposed to, if we had used closed source applications to make the movie, we could release the files, but you would have to buy a $3,500 program to be able to do anything with those files.
Right.
However, with using open source software, you can release the files and make sure that people can open them. They have access. One thing that's a good point to make, that different versions of animation software are not necessarily compatible with each other. So let's say that you made a commercial production with Maya instead of Blender and you use Maya 7, then whoever uses that file needs to get that version of Maya, and they might not even be able to.
Okay.
So it might actually be impossible in some cases.
All right, so there's a lot of thought that goes into this.
So,
it's not just saying, hey, the files are available.
But you can also do something with these.
Now, does that mean somebody could do something like fork the movie? Is that the idea?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So
that's encouraged.
Oh, all right. So do you feel that there are similarities between production of a 3D film and like software production?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's very similar. In case of software, you have source code and you have a compiler and you have object code. You need some kind of project management, you need an issue tracker, and so on and so forth. If you go into the world of animation, your source files in 3D animation, at least, are going to be 3D scene files that an animator is working in. Now, these have to be rendered, which is our version of compiling, so they don't look very nice in the animation package, but they work in real time, so you can almost like a really low grade video game almost. When you render them, you use more expensive lighting solutions, and you get some images that you can further process before you edit that in your final movie. There's compositing and grading and so on and so forth. And so what you see in the end is the movie is kind of like the binary version. You can look at it and you can do a few things with it, right? You can re-edit it maybe, but you can't really change it in a fundamental way unless you have access to those source files, to those production files.
Interesting.
So that makes it really like software. And the other thing is you have to manage that project somehow. So those files have to get tracked and versioned, and so we use SVN, which is very, very commonly used in software programs, and some people use Mercurial or Git, for animation.
So
projects.
in many ways, the output on one end is simply software, and the output on another is a 3D movie, right?
Yeah.
Now, how do you see open movies fitting into the remixing and resharing that we see in the free culture space?
I think they fit really well for simple remixes, because we use permissive licenses. Then they're very legal and free to be used for those purposes. But you can do like more deep changes than just editing changes. So you can change the animation, or you can change the story, or you can also remix in the sense that you're making an entirely different movie that you need certain props for. And instead of making those props from scratch, these open movie projects can serve as a library of ready-made parts that you can kind of pull in and assemble. So it works really well.
Last question for you, and it's kind of a bigger question, but what do you see happening with copyright long term?
That's a good question. I don't know the future, I guess. I don't know what's going to happen. I know what I would like to happen, sort of, but I don't know if that's where the world is headed or not. But I would like us to head towards more openness rather than less, And so I'm very much in favor of copyleft and permissive licensing, ideally a world that's post-copyright in a sense. I have a fundamental issue with copyright is that if you break it down to a very small, simplistic building block, is, what you're copywriting is speech. And so you're kind of saying to someone, you don't have the right to say this because you haven't paid me the money, or something like that. Now, when copying was like a prohibitively difficult action to do, where you needed a printing press or a scribe to copy your whole book, or you needed to transport expensive film around, the issue didn't come up because copying was so practically hard that having it be also legally hard is logical.
Right?
It's logical, and that creates a good revenue stream for people who are making things, right? And so it's also a compromise even in that setting. But now you have this possibility of information sharing and exchange on an unprecedented level. And it seems like we need a new way of doing business around or simply just sustaining artistic and creative endeavors that isn't just based on limiting how things can be distributed, because the biggest value is when things disseminate and change, not when they're kind of controlled for.
Interesting.
At least that's what I think.
No, that seems like a good one to me.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for being with us. Appreciate you taking the time.
Cheers.